drew with Real Madrid in the first Champions League semi-final. The match was very dynamic in terms of coaching reactions. And let's delve into the constant attempts of Carlo Ancelotti and Thomas Tuchel to outsmart each other. First of all, we have to point that a large group of Bayern players remained uncertain, with no guarantees to have an ability to play, but still with a real chance to recover in time before this match. For example, Matthias de Ligt, Konrad Leimer, Leroy Sané, Jamal Musiala, and Serge Gnabry, but finally everyone except de Ligt made the squad, with many even starting. There was also a surprise unrelated to players' readiness. The unconventional choice of flanks for Musiala and Sané. Leroy started on the left, Jamal on the right. As expected for Real Madrid, Lucas Vazquez replaced the disqualified Dani Carvajal. Another dilemma for Carlo Ancelotti was Tchouameni or Nacho as a central defender. Choosing Tchouameni makes the whole lineup more open, including the midfield zone, and Ancelotti still deployed Nacho here with Tchouameni in midfield. In the starting phase, advantage was on the Bayern side, and the key player was Leroy Sané. Bayern attacked well at the start. The main threat came from Sané in the central area. He positioned himself so that Real Madrid players couldn't decide who was responsible for him, like kind of mid flank. A good example is the sharpest moment in the first minute. The entire episode with Leroy Sané was free between Vasquez, Tchouameni, and Rudiger. Such uncertainty was evident not only in the opponent's third but also whenever Sané had the ball. Here's an example when the ball is in their own half. Sané started on the left flank, got full freedom, and then created. He could accelerate, making runs with the ball, initiate ball passes, and create chances independently. Real Madrid clearly struggled in that area and at the start of the match. Another threat came from transitional phases. The Kane-Sane combination came to the forefront. The Englishman dropped behind the ball and quickly recovered it, while the German opened up for a sharp pass. These tactics laid the foundation for Bayern's convincing start. But Real Madrid is a highly adaptive team, and they reacted during the game. Vasquez started closely marking Sane, even it was not required. There were no moments where Sane was unattended anymore. Real Madrid recreated and neutralized the main threat, even if it meant more freedom for other players. But Bayern was out of their major creating source. There were also Mazraoui and Goretzka, but they didn't main their zones were not as dangerous. Cruz punished Bayern for their semi-pressing with his brilliant pass. When Real Madrid covered Zane, Bayern problems without the ball came to the fore. This can be described as a semi-pressing, I guess, giving the appearance of pressure but without collective effort and with inevitable large gaps. Semi-pressing is much worse than deliberate waiting in like boss mode. Best embodiment of the problem is Miller's face. And here is one more, his synchronic face palm with Goretzka. So the first step is pressing is taken, often by Miller himself. But then there is a total passivity from most teammates. The team sets up to press, waits for the moment to start, but instead of collision, there is a gap and freedom for the opponent. These problems put defenders in an uncomfortable situation. On the one hand, they must react to the pressing start and rise the line. On the other hand, if the opponent is about to get free, it's more logical to drop back. The peak of this strategy was Cruz's assist. Bayern left him completely free, with space both in midfield and behind the defenders, making it easier for the run of Vinicius. Formally, this was Real Madrid's first shot, but the problem of semi-pressing in defense existed for Bayern even before. Of course, it's always frustrating to concede the first shot, but there is a logic in the fact that the opponent's first moment was so deadly. Then, three moves by Thomas Tuchel at halftime turned the game around. He made sharp changes at halftime, and each move hit the mark powerfully. He switched the opponents of the wingers. They now became inverted, and Sana went to right and Musiala on the left. He also transformed the possession structure. Now Guerrero and Miller operated in the half flanks, while the width was provided by the wingers, not the fullbacks. He brought on Guerrero instead of Goretzka in midfield, while defenders their roles were similar, but in the attack, the Portuguese rose higher and made distracting runs to the Musiala up. All these decisions reflected in Bayern's goals. Musiala and Zane worked excellently receiving the ball as wingers. The direction also helped now. The left-footed players shifted from the right flank and vice versa. Guerrero organized crucial distracting runs during the penalty moment. First, he drew Tchouameni and opened the midfield, through which the attack went, and then he distracted Vasquez, freeing up Musiala when receiving the ball. Rafa carried out this work from the half-flank role with the new possession structure. Goretzka operated in the different zone and in the first half, and Bayern had roughly this setup. The wingers narrowed, Miller played as a second striker, and Goretzka helped Leimer in progression. In the second half, there was often a different structure. Pure wingers without narrowing, Miller and Guerrero in the half flanks, and the fullbacks noticeably deeper. The embodiment of the first half is Miller shocked by the gaps in Bayern's pressing. The embodiment of the second half, Miller shocked by the gaps. The Real Madrid has half flanks. Clever Tuchel elegantly overturned the tactical board. Thomas regularly escaped Cruz, Guerrero shone through his supporting runs, and the wingers tore opponents apart during shifts. But, as also happens, Real Madrid reacted and adapted to the threat. Ancelotti counter movie were also genius. Formation changed, and ball delivery scheme to Vinicius also changed. To solve the problems that arose at the start of the half, Ancelotti switched to a 4-5-1 while defending and brought on Camavinga in Miller's zone. The problematic zone was the midfield, where Thomas regularly found space and Guerrero created also. Cruz was particularly vulnerable. Ancelotti helped the team organize defensively. After these changes, Valverde and Camavinga were responsible for the half-flank zone while defending, and Cruz positioned himself certainly and provided cover. Everyone felt comfortable and the defensive game stabilized. Substitutions that Ancelotti made were made to influence the attack. Brahim Diaz and Luka Modric came on. After the rearrangement, Real Madrid had fresh players in the central zone, all new, plus tireless Valverde. This provided a good basis for pressing, which really increased. In attack, the focus was delivering the ball to Vinicius. Now he started in a more focused flank position, which played a role in the penalty incident. Delivery was easier because Sane didn't actively help. Presumably, Tuchel initially wanted to avoid this scenario, but at halftime he risked using Leroy on the edge. One more big failure of this game surely was Kim. He faltered, but his tasks were harder than they seem. Kim played terribly, and that's correct, but there are a couple of details that are needed to understand the situation. The Korean player as the right central defender, this was an unusual position for him in the championship season with Napoli in the first part of the season with Bayern. He played as a left central defender, and that's a great difference. Of course, changing sides, it's not like a total accuse, but underestimating habits and comfort shouldn't be overblown. overlooked either. Kim was in uncomfortable conditions and against Vinicius. This positioning was not accidental. In previous games, when paired with Eric Dyer, Kim played in his usual position in the center, but to the left. But now he adopted him playing against Vinicius directly. Sometimes also indirectly as a covering player, but mainly directly. Due to problems in organizing the game without the ball in midfield, and when pressing, the difficult task became even more serious. Kim not only had to be Vinicius' more frequent opponent, but also play against him as too much space to advance with risk and without the ability to pass. Here is an early success episode of Kim's behavior, and even here there is a situation with free space in the midfield forcing the defender to play more risky. Now let's consider two main failures. Attention to the area around Kim. Vinicius always had maximum freedom and direction. Yes, the Korean behaved bad and assisted the opponent, allowing Vinicius to receive the ball in the midfield in less dangerous zone than allowing him to open behind the defense. Kim messed up, but most episodes were more difficult due to team's problem. The main culprit, still Kim, who the coach trusted in the context of the demanding task. This needed to be discussed for a more balanced assessment. At the same time, no reservation will save Kim in the penalty accident with Rodrigo, and that was a pure individual mistake. With no doubt, he didn't have to to make this foul. So, as a conclusion, we have to admit that Ancelotti and Tuchel played a brilliant match in the genre of tactical dialogue. A case where reactions and counter-reactions to the opponent players are a more important role than attempting to impose one's own pattern. Two great masters met, and it was enjoyable to watch. Bayern had more phases of dominance, and even Carlo Ancelotti after the match admits this. But a draw doesn't seem random. At every stage, the hosts left a loophole that allowed Madrid to get back into the game, and they are known to execute this task perfectly. Waiting for the second leg with more or less same chance, but with a slight favor for Real Madrid. And now, a few words about Borussia Dortmund, which beat PSG in the first Champions League semi-final 1-0. Edin Terzic's team remains unbeaten at home in this campaign and in the playoffs at Westfalen with only one win. Besides the yellow wall factor, yesterday's result was an involved tactical maneuvers. Borussia lined up without surprises. The participation of Mats Hummels and Ian Maatson was questionable, but both played. The first performed at a good level, and the other positions were also adjusted correctly. PSG slightly surprised with their starting setup. Ousmane Dembele operated in the central zone both during pressing and possession. As a result, there was a rhombus-faced scheme where on the flanks were covered by Zaire Emery on the right and Bradley Barcola on the left when necessary. First, let's go through the horrors of PSG starting formation and Borussia's finds. Well, discuss the changes after halftime at the last point. PSG pressing was leaky. Like against Barcelona, PSG used the personalized pressing model with a target the only player in the first stage who would get freedom. Then the target was Ronald Araujo, who participated in Barcelona's goal attack but made many mistakes and sent off in the first half. So the strategy was risky but mostly justified and worked well. Here, Luis Enrique trying to repeat this trick against Borussia, but yesterday there were two holes in Parisian pressure: quantitative and qualitative. They deliberate the left Julian Reinser free. It didn't work particularly well. The Norwegian advanced with the ball along the flank, and Dortmund got an easy way out for them. for the attack. Ryerson flanked neighbor Jadon Sancho received regular ball feeds, and Borussia even began to manipulate this pressure. The composed Mats Hummels drew Barkley and as close as possible, and at the last moment he passed. Thus, Ryerson got even more freedom. The second hole was a specific duel between Schlotterbeck and Mbappe. Formally, nobody was left free, but in practice, Mbappe, who worked lazily in pressing and attacked against the most dangerous passing central defender in the Champions League, play. Here is an excellent picture which enhances long pass from Nico, and he is really good at this type of pass, especially when given time to prepare. Mbappe's goal, he was near him but didn't offer real resistance, slowly closing in, and when close, didn't interfere at all. PSG pressing in this specific match was vulnerable, but it's part of a border problem. Enrique never built quality zonal pressing. He resorted to a simpler model, which he had to simplify even further and chose the opponent weak link in each match. Zone pressing is more challenging and demanding on players. It's close to Enrique's career, but here the Spaniard stopped at another simplifying his model. It seems like a forced compromise. Perhaps it's better than starts performing poorly. But problems still arise, for which top level teams are punished. PSG attack was totally sterile. Dortmund, on the other hand, brilliantly read their opponent. The hosts didn't press up to the goalkeeper and even allow some freedom to the central defenders. A frequent setup PSG lineup with a back three with Nuno Mendes remained while with the center back, and above them a midfield squad was formed. Formally, it's 4-3 in favor of PSG in the center, and Dortmund's goal was to prevent passes in that direction. The formula waiting within the compact 4-1-4-1 scheme, situational advances on the player with the ball, which didn't transition into the team's pressure. This led to endless passes without threat. Here is an example of an advance. Sancho checks the situation behind him and moves toward Mendes. Another important detail, Sancho's running trajectory blocks the pass into the center to Ruiz. Dortmund didn't leave PSG space behind the defender, closed the central direction, and didn't allow players with the ball to think for long. The result was passed with high accuracy, around 91%, but without high intention. The brilliance of Sancho is the point where tactics meet magic. One of the brightest impressions of yesterday's match was the performance of Jadon Sancho. In just 30 minutes, he surpassed the record of dribbles in the Champions League playoffs this season, and he ended up with 12, a record in semifinals since 2008 when Leo Messi collected a bit more. In his performance, tactics neighbored with magic. The tactical side involved the freedom on the flank against PSG, and Ryerson was allowed to advance with the ball, and Sancho became the obvious target, remaining one-on-one with Mendes. In the second half, PSG attempted to transform their pressure, but the gap in the press only shifted rather than disappeared. Here, Ruiz pressured Ryerson, and Zabitzer becomes free. The zone of rupture once again. Sancho's flank. Though the combined efforts of Dortmund and PSG, Sancho was fed excellently. But there were moments that were not tactical and were based purely on his personal brilliance. Here, Sancho, after his own recovery, dribbles past the opponent on his own half, or takes the capture of the greatest of his performance. In the 83rd minute, he already had a basic understanding of Sancho's contribution to this match, and here he creates a scoring opportunity with a pass through Beraldo's leg. In terms of brightness, it's almost on par with the Messi Boateng moment. Jadon truly excelled in so much. PSG added in the second half. How? That's a good question. The starting plan with or without the ball was clearly in favor of Dortmund, but after the halftime, PSG created just as many chances and could have easily taken a draw. How? The answer will be not entirely tactical. Luis Enrique made changes, but they only indirectly influenced the game. For example, Dembele was now positioned in the center, but predominantly on the right. Sometimes isolations were organized especially for him. This improvement made PSG's ball progression easier. Now there was such a recipient, and there was no need to focus on the blocked center, but clear chances, specifically through these planned move, didn't materialize. Enrique also asked Ruiz to engage in pressing on Ryerson, but even here, there was a clear breakthrough. The opponent zone of freedom only shifted rather than disappeared. The good moments for PSG were not the result of these cosmetic changes. They came in transitional episodes and with a masterpiece from individual players. The common element, mastery in connecting attack at speed, for example, Dembele or Barcola, and delivery to Mbappe in any zone, the left side of the field or near the penalty area. Here, there is more mastery than anything else. The team is capable of pulling off a couple of such situations in any match with such a players, and that's obvious, but there was one structural source of threat. Fabian Ruiz runs. He made these runs very dangerous in the penalty area, and clear chances with his involvement were born from a similar scheme. PSG delivers the ball to the final line on the right, passes back to the free player in the center, then follows a pass to Ruiz, who opens up in the penalty area as timely as possible. As the conclusion, Dortmund was better prepared and better organized for this match. PSG was better individually, but that's more or less obvious with such players. In the first half, Dortmund's advantage was clear over PSG. In the second, to my mind, PSG was slightly better, and it's evident that it's hard to shut down Enrique's team completely, but Dortmund attempt turned out to be worthy. And in terms of chances, that the match turned out to be roughly equal, perhaps the minimum victory for Dortmund was the optimal result for the intrigue. Waiting for the second leg and the next video. Bye bye.